Hello, and welcome back to Tales of the Swamp Horror Stories. Tonight I titled this story 25 Years in the Basin, the Night the Rougarou Found Us. The old Cajuns always said there were two swamps, the one you saw and the one that saw you. Most people just laughed when they heard that. Tourists came to the Atchafalaya swamp looking for alligators, moss-covered trees, stories and pictures they could show and talk about when they got home. They didn't believe in monsters. I didn't either. At least, not until the night I saw it. I had been living with my wife in a small cabin deep in the swamp for nearly 25 years. I hunted there, I fished there, I trapped there. Our nearest neighbor lived across the swamp. About 3 bayous away, probably 5-6 miles as the crow flies. Solitude never bothered us. In fact, we preferred it. But the swamp has its rules. Respect the land, the water around it, respect the wildlife, and never travel unfamiliar bayous after sunset. And if an old Cajun tells you don't go somewhere, don't go. Heed his warning. My trouble started when I ignored that rule. One afternoon, I stopped at a small bait shop on the edge of the basin. An old man by the name of Rougarou sat outside cleaning catfish. He looked at me as I approached, and with what might have been a sixth sense, he asked, or maybe stated, would be more appropriate. "You headed north?" "That's the plan," I said. He nodded north toward a small bayou that disappeared into the trees. "That there bayou goes to Devil's Cut," he said. "Stay out of Devil's Cut." I laughed. He didn't. "Why?" I asked. His knife stopped moving. "The Rougarou lives there. It hunts there." I smiled. He didn't. For a long, uncomfortable moment, he simply stared at me. Then he said something that made my skin crawl. "Boy, it ain't the ones who believe that never return. It's the ones that don't." That night, I couldn't get those words out of my head. A week later, pushed by the need to find new trapping grounds, it got the best of me. Now at this point, I need to say, for clarification reasons, although I lived in the swamp for 25 years at this time, the Atchafalaya Basin is a huge place, and I didn't know the area in question. I didn't know the people out that way. With that said, I returned to the story. So the next morning, I loaded my traps and whatever else I would need for a weekend or two scouting that area, and I headed down the bayou. Even after I found the small bayou pointed to me by Lucian, Devil's Cut was still very difficult to find. Twisted cypress trees, low-hanging branches, and bushes clouded the waterway. It was almost as though the vegetation was trying to warn me, do not enter there. The deeper I traveled, the quieter it became. No birds, no frogs, no insects, nothing. The silence felt wrong. Even my small outboard seemed to be too loud. By late afternoon, I reached a small patch of dry ground where the vegetation gave way to a small clearing, and I set up my camp. I planned to spend a couple of days testing the area for beaver, bobcat, coyotes, nutria, and whatever else I could scale. Just a few nights, that was all. As darkness began to set in around me, I built a small fire and started supper. That's when I heard the howl. It echoed through the trees so loudly, the water around me seemed to vibrate. It wasn't a wolf. It wasn't a coyote either. It almost sounded human. Almost. The howl rose higher and higher before it ended in a deep growl that sent chills down my spine. I grabbed my rifle and swept my flashlight beam across the tree line. Nothing. The darkness swallowed everything. A few minutes later, I heard another howl from farther away. But this one, it was different. Like, not quite as guttural. It didn't last as long. Then from another direction came another howl, then another and another. I felt surrounded. I didn't sleep for hours, but exhaustion finally took control and I fell asleep. Just before dawn, something startled me awake. Still today, thinking back, I don't know what woke me. Some sixth sense perhaps, warning of danger. I don't know. What I do know though, is that something was watching me at the edge of camp. At first I thought it was a bear. Then it stood upright. And my God, that thing was tall. It was massive, at least 8 foot in height. Dark fur covered its body. The shoulders were broad and muscular. The arms hung unnaturally long by its side. Its fingers, if you could call them that, ended just above its knees. And its eyes, I swear were glowing red, with no light reflecting them except from the moon. I froze. The creature just stood at the tree line staring at me for several seconds. Then it smiled. I kid you not, it literally smiled. Not like what you would maybe see in a dog that you know well enough to understand when it's happy and content. No, this thing smiled like a human. That smile showed intelligence. A smile that knew just how terrified I was. Then it stepped behind a big cypress tree and vanished. Just like that, it was gone. When I was sure it was gone, I slowly walked to where it had been standing. I saw nothing. No creature, no movement, only tracks. Huge tracks. 2 times the size of mine at least, which would have been probably 16 inches or more. And the width, they were like 7 inches wide. And each one sunk several inches into the soft earth. I broke camp and left immediately. Trip back to the main channel should have only taken 3 hours. It took 7, because every turn felt wrong. Bayous I remembered coming through suddenly dead-ended. Landmarks I had put into memory were gone. More than once, I felt like something was guiding me deeper into the swamp. As darkness approached, I finally reached the main channel. Relief washed over me. Then I felt something hit the side of my boat. The boat rocked violently. I looked down along the side and saw a massive muddy handprint on the aluminum. 5 long claw marks gouged the side of the boat. Something surfaced a few yards behind me. I heard movement in the water, slowly, deliberately. I did not look back. I gave the small motor full throttle and sped away. The next morning, I waited for Lucian at the bait shop. Before I could say anything, he looked at me and sighed. "You saw him, eh?" he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. The old man made the sign of the cross over his chest. My grandpappy saw him years ago when he was a young man, strong man, brave man. He pointed north toward the swamp in Devil's Cut. Rougarou, been out there longer than any of us. What is it, I asked. Lucian stared out across the swamp. Some say it's a cursed man that won't die. Some say it's a spirit. Others say it's a being that protects the swamp and the wildlife that lives there. All I know is those who mistreat the swamp or animals around Devil's Cut never come back. I never returned to Devil's Cut or laid eyes on old Lucius again. I was puzzled though when I asked the bait shop owner later, when I was passing by a few months after, where was old Lucian Boudreaux? He gave me a strange look and said, "Who?" I said, "Lucian, the old fisherman who warned me to stay out of Devil's Cut. I spoke to him when I returned a few months back. He was cleaning fish on the dock." That's when he said, "First of all, you should stay away from that area of the swamp. You should have heeded that warning. Next, as for the old man you've asked about, he's been dead for about 70 years. He's buried just out back. This used to be his place." I stood there frozen. The swamp has a way of playing tricks on your mind, but this was something else. It makes me wonder, have any of you ever encountered something while you was out fishing or hunting? Something out in the woods or water that you just couldn't explain? Let me know in the comments, because I'd love to read your stories. As for me, most people don't believe my story, and that's fine. I wouldn't believe it either. But sometimes, late at night, I'll wake to the sound drifting through the darkness outside our cabin. A long, mournful howl, far away, yet somehow close enough to hear. And every time it happens, I remember those eyes, the eyes that should not reflect. They seemed unearthly somehow. And let's not discuss that smile, that terrible, knowing smile. Whatever it was out there that night in the swamp, it knows I saw it. And I just can't shake the feeling that one day, it will come looking for me. Hope you enjoyed this story. And please join us again for the next story. I try to put one out every week. If you liked what you've seen here, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell so you'll be notified when the next one airs. See you then, and God bless.